Hello, everyone. I'm Hunter. I am one of your hosts with Power to Fly, and I hope you enjoyed that talk that we just had. And now it is my great pleasure that I get to moderate the next chat with our next speaker, Maria Urena. Now, a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be celebrating intersectionality. Now, there is no Latinidad without community. So, in order to address the various challenges and utilize the many strengths of the Latinx population, community becomes the catalyst, the bridge, and the solution. Now we're joined by philanthropist, thank you, healthcare professional and associate director of Optum, California, Maria here as she relates her experience leveraging community to enrich the lives of her family and other Latinx people and learn how you can do the same regardless of where you live. Maria, thank you so much for being here. How are you today?
Thank you so much for having me. I am excited to be here, thrilled and honored, to be quite honest, to be surrounded by such wonderful people. So thank you for having me.
Well, we're honored to have you. Thank you for making the time today. It really is a gift. And I know we all got a lot of different technology things and schedules. So I really appreciate you figuring it all out and making it work for us. So before we jump into questions, and I also just want to let the audience know, this is a live talk right now, unless you're watching this in the future and it's pre-recorded, but at the moment it's live. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, and Maria and I would love to hear from you. Comments, feelings, questions, we will address them here. So please do keep that chat alive if you would like. So Maria, before we jump into our questions here, if you just, I would love to hear a little bit about your own career journey, about who you are, where you're at, and how community has, been an impact on your life and your journey.
Sure, and thank you so much for that question. As I think about that, I pondered this for a little bit, and I thought, what are the things that are important for me to make sure that I mention? And
Mm,
I'm just so honored and thrilled to have you or have me share my journey with you and your audience. You
mm,
know, I, I don't know that many people know this. I'm a migrant. I came here, or I was brought here when I was 4 years old. And so life was very different. You don't realize how different it is until I think you do a retrospective look and you realize how different it was.
mm,
Now, this, I will be honest, is probably not different for your audience. It's probably not anything new that they haven't heard. It's
mm,
probably a very similar journey. But when I looked at it, when I looked at my own journey, I thought, oh my gosh, we did all of that. How did we do that? And so part of that is this whole sense of community. And so my journey, like I said, is it started, I was brought when I was 4 years old. I was put in school back then, and I'm going to say it's a long time ago. There wasn't, there was ESL, but there wasn't like this dual immersion program. And so it was very difficult as a child to try to fit in and understand what you didn't understand and have people tell you things that you didn't know were, something that was going on in your life, right? Like I reflect sometimes in some areas where I didn't know I was poor until somebody pointed it out. And I
mm,
thought, oh my gosh, really? We're poor? I don't know that. I just know that I couldn't afford the shoes that somebody else had, or I just knew that I had holes in my shoes, but I didn't relate that to being poor. I didn't relate that to poverty because I think with community and your family is a big part of your community. Your family protects you and your family kind of I want to say, it's like you're back in the womb. They just protect you and they create this cocoon around you. So anyway, so my journey was that, and I really wanted to reflect on that because I, again, you live your life and you kind of meet your goals and your objectives and you keep moving, but it's always important to look back and say, "Wow, we did it," and pat yourself on the back. You did it. And again, I'm sure that my journey is not very different than many, that are watching now. So through that, I'll tell you, I think it wasn't so through that, I guess I'll just go back to, I've been able to accomplish quite a few things. So professionally, and I apologize if I'm segueing into something different, but professionally, I've been able to accomplish, having 2 master's degrees, which I never thought I could do. I thought that my job was to get married and go have kids, and because nobody else told you anything different, except my father. My father would tell me different. So
Mm,
anyway, I've been able to accomplish 2 master's degrees. I have my certificate as a family nurse practitioner, so I'm a clinician.
hmm,
I am a very happy small business owner along with my husband, and we run a nothing to do with medicine, but complete service automobile service company out here in the Inland Empire. My daughter works in there as well, and I've been able to be part of several community chambers, local, regionally, and statewide, national programs, and I've been able to create curriculums where I never thought I'd be able to do something like that, but a curriculum that would help small business owners get to the next level of their life. So that's been a little bit of my journey and kind of what I've done. And now I have this beautiful, wonderful career here at Optum as a leader. And it is something that, again, I think as we reflect back and we say, I came from a small town, and in Mexico, that didn't have any running water. And when I look back at it now, it is still a small town that doesn't have running water.
mm.
The inhabitants still depend on this water truck to come through and provide water. So definitely a journey that I think I'm very proud of. I'm very proud of, and I would not have been able to do that with those around me.
Wow, that's truly incredible. Thank you, Maria, for sharing that. It's such a journey you just took us on, and in such a short amount of time, but it's been such a full life that you've already had and that you continue to have. Um, I really appreciate hearing about all, I mean, that's incredible. You have 2 masters, absolutely amazing. And you have healthcare, and you have this family business. You mentioned your daughter works in it as well. You're talking about how your family is your community. I love that. There's also your work community as well, which is really
Excellent.
beautiful that you've built that. Um, and so I also, you started to talk about a bit of other initiatives that you're working on. You mentioned the Chamber of Commerce, but you also, to kind of tie it together, you said you got one of your masters in healthcare. So have you also been involved with healthcare initiatives for your community?
Sure.
Yeah.
So part of I guess the part that's missing in my first response, I got so excited telling you about it, is yeah, when I was younger, again, you don't, at least I didn't. I didn't know I was poor until somebody pointed it out. I
Right.
didn't realize um, how people were treated in the sense that the social determinants of health exist, and we're part of that, right? We live those, so we know what they are. We can see them, we can smell them, we can taste them, we can touch them, we feel them. um, but for me, I think it wasn't until I saw my mother's patient bill of rights be not honored.
Mm,
And at that moment, and I think I was in middle school, at that moment, I thought, you know what? We have to be better.
yeah.
I have to be better. I have to do something, because you don't want to see, one, your parents go through something that's horrible. But
Yeah.
then the other is you look at people around you and you don't want to do that. So I began to volunteer at a very young age. I began to volunteer in health fairs, and I began to use my language that at one point had been, something that you couldn't speak. You couldn't speak Spanish. I began to use my language as a tool to help others like
Mm,
us. And so as a volunteer, and through the trajectory of my entire life, yeah, like I said, I built curriculums for the Chamber of Commerce for small business growth. But in healthcare, I also joined the Migrant Clinicians Network. I became part of planning committees for different health fairs for different organizations, big organizations, community, grassroots organizations. And the one that I fell, I guess I want to say the most in love with, and only because it was so huge in my community, were community organizations that were created to help support the Latino community in regards to diabetes control. And
mm,
so I would make sure that I was available to be part of that planning committee, make sure I was part of the volunteer committee. And we would put together programs that we were going to take out into the community free of charge, of course. We would find sponsors and so forth, but we would go out and bring these out to the community where we wanted to provide culturally sensitive, culturally appropriate, culturally relevant,
Mm,
non-judgmental um, diabetes care. And in that, we also brought in chefs that would help to support and do on-site demonstrations of cooking of healthy, culturally appropriate, and financially feasible meals, so that our community knew that they didn't have to give up all of their food, um, but there were ways to cook it maybe a little bit different. And there were other foods that you could incorporate that were still part of our cultural staple, if you will. And those have been some of the things that we've done. Moving forward today, and I can still get involved with all of those committees, and I love them. So if you guys are out there and you need me to come and help support, I'm happy to do that. But moving forward today, I am part of the Optum Unidos community, which is something that has been so refreshing for me here at Optum. And it's I'm the co-chair, and so it is an initiative in helping to support the DEI type of work. And so we definitely want to look at diversity, equity, inclusion, and we want to make sure that we're making that difference. So all of the things that I believe that I have done, I've always looked at how can we create an impact in our community. And I'll tell you, I have to take a step back and say, how has all of that created an impact in me as a person? And it
mm.
is such a humbling experience, and it's such a rewarding experience. So I do invite everybody and anybody, get involved, right? But anyway, so hopefully I've answered your question around the healthcare piece of it. I've done a little bit of work around the mental health initiatives as well with young adults. Unfortunately, we go through this stage, and for a while there, and I think right now we're kind of living this again. We do have our young adolescents that go through a variety of different challenges, or I guess I'll call them challenges at this point. But there's bullying in school. They're bicultural. You've got all these things that are happening to you as a young person, as a adolescent, young adult, and then you're also dealing with the biculturalism, everything else, and your hormones. So all of those things together can cause for some anxiety, some depression. So I've done some work around that as well, because I think it's really important that we set our young adults for success. They are our future, so we definitely want to make sure we invest in them.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I thank you so much. I have to say, like, backing all the way up to the experience with your mother and her being rejected of her Bill of Rights, that I got very emotional. I want to say, I'm like, thank you for sharing that very personal
Thank you.
moment. I'm still very touched by that. And, because that's just heartbreaking to be in that moment in your shoes. I was there with you on that journey. And then to hear what you did with that information was, you said, we can be better. Our system needs to be better. And you went out and you made it better. So thank you. And you continue to do that in large ways and small ways. When you were talking about, I love the bringing in the chefs for the folks with diabetes, and not only making it culturally appropriate, but you also were talking about the financial side, because there's the food inequality and things being totally inaccessible at like a health food store where prices are through the roof, and it's just absurd, even like, so how you were able to introduce things and recipes that were familiar in a way, but also affordable, which is, I just think, is incredibly thoughtful and I don't know, powerful.
Thank you.
I just love too, just that you're saying, like, you don't have to give up our culture to take care of yourself, is, I'm paraphrasing, but it's essentially what you were doing. If correct me if I'm wrong.
You're absolutely correct. We do not have to give up our culture to do anything,
Right.
not to take care of our health, not to get our education, not to go out and make a difference. and not to really honestly do anything. Our culture, everybody's culture, right? Not just my culture, but everybody's culture. Your culture is what makes you unique.
Mm,
And so being able to find those things in your culture that 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 you want to keep, and that are, I want to say, are maybe a gift to someone else, because they're a gift to you, but they could be a gift to someone else. What does that look like? And so you definitely you don't have to give up your culture or your identity to get to where you want to get to.
yeah, absolutely. It's so beautiful. Thank you. So I love to, you talked about early on as well that your father told you different. And was that sort of the beginnings of realizing that there were other people, like there was a potential in community for you to grow and for you to change? And if you could share about, the importance of community continuing on in your career and in your life, of how that's been able to help you. It sounds like your dad was instrumental in an early age. Like, what other parts of community and what other communities have helped you along the way when you're like, I see a problem and I want to change it, but I do need help making it happen?
Sure. So when you're young, so yeah, so my father used to tell me, you do. So let me back up a little bit. So growing up, when you're here from a different country, you don't understand the language, you don't understand, that your environment, um, and all you hear is, you're not smart enough. You probably should just get married and go have your kids. You're hearing those things, right? But you're hearing it from people that are not your family.
Mm,
And you're hearing it from people that you think know better. And so that could be detrimental to a young person, right? To any person. Let's be honest, any person at any age, it could be detrimental. My father, and I don't remember exactly how this happened, but my father, I remember we would have these in-depth conversations. Now, for him to have in-depth conversations with his kids, I think is very valuable. And I'll tell you why. He had 11 kids. So imagine having in-depth conversations one at a time with 11 of his kids, and potentially, at different times of our journey. But, you know, I remember we were having this conversation, and he said, you can do different. You don't have to stay here. Here's what I want for you. And so he reminded me of this. He said, we came to the States. Now, I was too young to understand that before, but now when we talk about it, this is what he was saying. We came to the States so I could give you a better future and an opportunity. But what he used to say to me is, I want you to be able to be independent enough to financially support yourself as you continue to grow in this country, is what
mm,
he would say to me.
mm.
And so, that's great advice, but when you're in middle school, you don't, what does that mean, right? But I would remember that. And so as different opportunities would come to me now from my community, my extended community, I would listen, or I would hear that in the back of my mind, and I would say, well, maybe this is that opportunity, that I need to take. One of those, I'll tell you, came from my French teacher in high school. There
Hmm.
was a vocational nursing program that was offered through the Los Angeles Unified School District. And you had to apply, obviously, you could only take it in your senior year. And so you had to go to a different high school, you would get bussed over or whatever. You would take this curriculum, and then you would have to go to the hospital, do your clinical hours. And then at night, you had to go to night school at your regular high school so you could graduate with your senior class. So I thought, so my French teacher said, hey, there's this program, I think you'd be great. And I thought, well, maybe this is what it is. I don't know. I
Hmm.
took it. And when I graduated from high school, I was able to sit for my state exam with the Board of Nursing. I passed, and I was probably one of the youngest licensed vocational nurses that I know. I was 18 and I had a license, and I was able to go work and take care of patients. So when my father tells me those things, that still stays with me.
Hmm.
And so again, when I look at the community that you build, right? Because the way that I see community working is it's not just your family. Your family's a big chunk of it for sure. But then it's those people that you associate yourself with. It's bigger than your environment. It's your coworker, it's your teacher, it's your friend. And sometimes they say things that maybe they don't feel is going to have an impact, or they're just talking, to have a conversation, but it clicks in you, something clicks in you, and you think, well, why can't I do that? Or
Mm,
maybe I should do that. And that's happened to me quite a bit also with my friend entrepreneur, my female friend entrepreneurs. They'll tell me about a program that they've done, and I'll say, well, let me look into that. And so that's how I've been able to. I'll tell you, I've gotten business certificates from Cornell University, Stanford University, the LBAM program, USC, right? I've been the president of the UCSF Center for Health Professions Alumni Board. So I'm an alumni of that Center for Health Professions Fellowship. And so that's the community. So as you continue to explore those just different opportunities, you get the opportunity to meet some really amazing people, and you get the opportunities to learn from them, and they get to learn from you too, right? It's not always I'm going to learn from them. They get to learn from me. Sometimes, and I'll tell you, as a woman of color and someone with my background, you say, well, what do they have to learn from me?
mm,
And it's easy for you to do that to yourself. But I'll tell you what, the day that I was asked if I would be the president of the alumni board for UCSF's Center for Health Professions alumni, I thought, I have something to give. What is that? And so it really makes you to, retrospectively take a look inside of you and understand that. And so hopefully I've answered your question. I know I kind of digressed a bit, but hopefully I've answered your question.
oh, absolutely. And we're getting some great questions from the audience too. And there's a perfect segue into one, which we'll do in just a sec. And it's really just incredible how much you've achieved and how you've just been so motivated. I think it's in a way, it's humbling and reassuring to hear that even with someone with your great achievements, that little voice of imposter syndrome still creeps in to all of us, and it's encouraging in a way to hear. You're like, okay, that's the voice, not real. It's just the voice. It's from conditioning, from early age or whatever it was, the people that weren't your father and weren't your family, all those folks still creeps in, but you're able to be like, okay, I have something to offer. I love when you were sharing with all the certificates you have. I want to see Maria's wall of certificates. I imagine it's quite the throne. Um, so we had this question that is related to what you're saying. Someone asked in the audience, community is literally the backbone of empowerment. Can you share some ways in which Latinx people who are in relatively better positions can help uplift others from their community like you have? So what are some ways that other folks can help the community and send the elevator, back down to send it back up?
That again, that is just such a great question. And I'll tell you, at Optum, we're currently working on that. And I can't answer the question without taking us back to what we thought it meant before.
Mm,
And there's nothing wrong with what we thought it meant before, because I think there's a lot of value in that. We used to think that it was, coming back to your community and being able to financially support, some local initiatives to help support the community, right? We'll just say like the backpacks, right? We come back to our community, we do fundraisers for back to school supplies, and we hand them off to the kids, which is great. I love those initiatives. And we also thought that it was mentoring those that seek out mentorship so that you can show them or tell them how you did it, and hope that you can light that spark in the next person so that they can go out and find their own opportunities. But somehow there's still something missing. So again, I love the mentorship opportunities, because without somebody telling you and kind of showing you, right, you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know. But I think the best way to do that is to sponsor someone. So there's some things that we've done through the chamber, and I'll tell you, one of my sisters actually began this program, and I just kind of jumped on board and said, yeah, let's do it. Is you sponsor someone. Not only do you mentor, but you have to sponsor someone to get to where they need to get to. And so sponsoring someone means if I'm in this position at Optum and there's a younger executive or manager, or maybe not in a management position, that wants to get to maybe another step, a larger step than mine. So they would seek you out, and you create this match, and you decide to work together. You sponsor them by being available to them, not just to mentor, but when the time comes that maybe they require your feedback on who should be the best candidate, you plug that person in and you sponsor them to at least get their foot in the door. It doesn't mean financial, right? Sometimes it could, but I'm just talking about helping the next person get their foot in the door. Because I think, again, we can mentor and then we expect people to just go out and get it done, but sometimes they need that help to open that door. Those doors can be very firmly shut. And so it takes someone on the inside to help to open it. So what my sister and I did, and kind of then came back to Optum, but what my sister and I did, and this was with young kids that were in middle school, entering high school, who are at risk at failing, failing their year, and then potentially being held back, is we created well, she created it. Like I said, I just jumped on the bandwagon there with her because I wanted to support and I thought it was a great cause. She created this program for these at-risk kids, and she would raise money to sponsor their school supplies and everything else. But she would have an after-school program. Well, now we would have this after-school program, and we would help them with their homework so that they didn't fail. We would bring in a licensed social worker to help with some of that emotional heaviness that they had and help with that anxiety, depression, and so forth. But then we would also bus them. We were able to get a bus from the local unified school district. We would bus them to different offices of whatever profession they thought they wanted to be, so that they could spend a day with, or spend a week with, or create a mentorship program with a bridge. So if they wanted to be a judge, we would take them to a judge that was part of the program, and they would spend the day with the judge going through his cases. If they wanted to be an attorney, they would do the same thing. So that was a form of sponsorship. They were younger, but that was a form of sponsorship, like what we're trying to do today, is have them, it's almost like a day at work with your parents, right? But be there with the professional that you wanted to be. So that's how I think we can help the next person.
Oh, that's so perfect, because actually our next conversation is all about over mentored and under sponsored is actually the next topic. So it's kind of perfect that it's going to be perfectly segueing into more details about
Good.
sponsorship. So thank you for touching on that. It's really, really just spot on. So we only have a couple of minutes, Maria, left. This has been so incredible. Is there anything you'd like to share potentially with, obviously we'd love to hear how we can stay connected with you, but before we get there, any advice you can give to other Latinx individuals who are seeking to help their community, but don't necessarily know where to begin? Maybe that's the mentorship and the sponsorship is very important, but are there other ways that folks can maybe start with? And also, if there's anything you want to say to maybe the younger generation that's starting out right now.
Sure. So thank you for that, Spacey. And yeah, we talked about the Hispanic Chambers of Commerce. I've actually been part of the Asian Chamber of Commerce, the Black Chamber of Commerce, and there's another chamber that is escaping my mind right now, but part of the LGBTQ plus community. So the easiest way, or the easiest thing that I can say, is seek out an organization, a nonprofit organization that is community-based. It could be local, regional, or statewide. And depending on where you live, you may not have local. So look for those regional or statewide organizations that have a similar mission to, or objectives to the goals that you want to accomplish, and reach out to them. Tell them you want to get involved and you want to learn more. If they are not the organization to help you, they certainly can help guide you to other organizations that would align with your goals and your objectives. Like I said, I started locally and I ended up statewide, and from there I connected everywhere else. So it's been really fantastic. And to the younger generation, you have the power to change the trajectory of your life. So don't let anybody tell you that you can't. You can. And I am happy to stay connected with everyone and anyone. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm sure that my profile will have my LinkedIn information, and I'm happy to have you share my my email address as well.
Fantastic. Maria, this has been a delight and truly a gift to chat with you today. Thank you so much for making the time, for sharing so open-heartedly and powerfully with your experience and your strength. And it really does give me hope. And I hope for all of our listeners, it's been helpful. Thank you so much for making the time today.
Thank you so much.